And welcome, everybody. Welcome to Tasty Tuesdays and In Bed with Possibilities podcast. I'm Lorraine Hughes from Crafting Possibilities, and today I have Johanna and Colleen from the Lotus Sisters with me. How does your day go, my beautiful beings?
Yeah, good, thank you.
We're going really well. That was a beautiful intro. We really loved it.
I had so much fun putting it together. Like, it's just so different having the two people in there instead of just the one. It's like just a really different energy that goes with that.
Yeah.
So super cool. Hi, Cindy. So as you'll see on the chats there, we get our friends that are popping up in there. Cindy is from Melbourne. So that's really cool. Lovely. And so these beautiful sisters are just so unique in so many ways, and my audience will get to know this over the course of our show. Hi, Alex.
Hey,
Alex knows you guys. And I would love for either or both of you to talk about, like, give us a little rundown, a little intro to who you be, how you came into this beautiful world, and where your sort of intentions are for your journey in life.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess I'll start. So I'm Colleen and this is Johanna. Sometimes we get confused. But yeah, we're sisters. So we obviously grew up together, 4 kids in our family. We're the youngest two. And I think we were very creative when we were younger growing up. Our parents did kind of foster that creativity in us, and we were a bit rebellish as well. But yeah, largely a bit of an academic family as well. So our spiritual awakening kind of came in our 30s, which was actually kind of it was an enjoyable experience, but also very painful. And we decided that we really needed to honour our creativity and our intuition, and to work with people around that, mainly women, and kind of igniting creativity in others. That's okay. That's perfect. Actually, I'll let Hannah talk a little bit now as well.
Yeah, I think you summed it up quite well. Yeah, we came together a few years ago, and we decided that we wanted to help women on their journey, and we've continued to grow and change as the business has as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, I love that. So, just hi, Starthy. So, saying hi to people, and then we jump back over to the questions. So, I would like to know, like you mentioned just briefly, your spiritual journey sort of started in your 30s. It was a little bit bumpy. Would you like to sort of talk a little bit more about that, just so that we can, be of an inspiration to others who might be feeling a bit the same?
Yeah, sure.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, well, mine started probably initially in my 20s. I'd gone through a fair bit of stuff, and I was involved in a pretty bad car accident. So that started a bumpy road of recovery. So, dealing with the trauma and at the same time accumulating a little more trauma along the way. So yeah, it came out of bringing me to my knees, and so yeah, I think Colleen's was quite similar, but manifested slightly different.
Yeah. So mine was an illness that I developed just through being overworking and not looking after myself, not knowing what self-care was, a bit of burnout, things like that. And yeah, leaving my conventional job. We both kind of worked in the education system earlier on in our careers, and we were chronic people pleasers. Like,
yeah, sure.
we and I think that's really common with people who are very empathic, or our mum was a teacher,
both in caring industries where we cared for others or taught others.
That's it. We were working with people with high needs, and but we had no concept of how to look after ourselves as part of that. And so burnout and, these things were always going to happen as part of the journey. And then came for me, it was like I had a lot of work to do on my kidneys and my digestive system and my nervous system. I had a whole lot of healing to do around that. And yeah, you had PTSD.
Yeah, mental health issues to come back from or to recover from.
That's it. So it was like that journey of healing was when, you know, being brought to your knees and I had to leave my job. I had no option. And then came the spiritual kind of insights with that when, you know, you had nowhere else to go or everything was kind of falling apart. But it was really falling together. We just didn't know that at the time. So I reflect on it now as a very beautiful experience, even though it felt incredibly painful at the time because everything was, just falling apart and your ego's getting smashed by the fact that, you know, you can't carry on the way you're going or you can't continue the same. You have to change your behaviors and your thought patterns and all of these things about you that are quite toxic or what's the word? They can't continue the way that they were going.
I absolutely agree. Getting rid of those belief systems that no longer serve you. That can be a rough ride.
Yes. Yeah, we're really quite smashed in the process, but like Colleen said, it's beautiful in its own way.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's upon reflection, you know, years down the track, you can look back and go, oh, actually, that was I'm so glad that happened. And I'm glad that happened when it did. And I'm sort of actually glad it happened how it did. Because if it hadn't happened that way, I wouldn't be where I am now. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
Even if you can't see it at the time. So I guess that's one of the things that for our beautiful viewers out there, anybody who's like going through a bit of a rough time at the moment and feeling a bit bashed and smashed about by their starting of their spiritual journey and, you know, all of those belief systems coming up and like loud in your face, it does get better. It truly does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Allow yourself
initiation, right?
Yeah, it's the hazing.
Yes.
It's the hazing process of spirituality and joy. So what sort of modalities and systems did you sort of first get introduced to on your journey?
I guess, when I was really at the height of my illness and really searching, it encouraged me to do a lot of searching. I came across this course about, you know, how to read the Akashic Records. And I had a friend who said, oh, you know, I think you should, and she was very spiritual. I was lucky to have her in my life at that time. And she said, oh, look, I think you should come along to this. I didn't know what the Akashic Records were. But I was just so smashed that I was open to anything at that stage. I was just like, you know what? All right, like whatever. And so, I did a course on that, and that really shifted things for me because all of a sudden I realized that, oh, hang on, I'm kind of intuitive. I didn't realize this skill was here. And that was probably the first time I started getting into a lot of astrology and mindfulness and meditation and all those types of things were starting to like really come in strong. And then with that was the art as well. So just, you know, we were I mentioned we were very creative as kids, but then life gets in the way, you know, you get into your career and all of a sudden you don't give time to creativity.
It's always the first thing that goes,
So we, painting was a big part of just for ourselves initially. Like we weren't into necessarily selling heaps of art at the beginning, but just to paint for ourselves without any purpose. But, you know, now we think of it as like, oh, well, it was art therapy. We were just doing it instinctively for ourselves at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to look at those early canvases and see the stuff we were processing at the time and how much processing that's gone on through the art as well. Fascinating.
Yeah, wow. And how about you, Johanna? Like what sort of modalities did you get to play with to start off with?
Yeah, so Colleen came up with the Akashic Records stuff and I was like, I'm not sure about this at the time, but she started reading for me and I was noticing really big shifts. And so I got curious about the records too. And so in the beginning, I'd sit with her in the readings and she'd mentor me or teach me. And so now we read the records together. and we have slightly different skills. Colleen is more past life orientated and things like that. I'm more relational based. But although we read them slightly different, I think it's quite synergetic when we work together as well. And yeah, certainly the art I've picked up too, and recently finished studies in psychotherapy. So yeah.
That is so cool. I just love the combination, and I know from the work that I do that often past life and love stuff and relationship stuff, it all comes in together.
Yeah, absolutely. Different pieces of the puzzle, right?
Absolutely. And it's like people come in for just this one thing, but then it's like dunk, 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 dunk.
Yeah.
I would like to know just a little bit more about the Akashic Records stuff, because I have my own experience with having accessed my own late in the last, what are we now, 8 months. I made a big fat demand of myself that I have to have access, full access. And that was a bit of an interesting download that happened over a 15-minute span, and it felt like 2 hours, and it was just like, whoa. Go sit down now. So, and I have used them a little bit to my advantage, definitely, to get some more clarity and highlights and awarenesses and things like that. But I'd like you to maybe, have you got any maybe stories or insight as to how the Akashic Records could actually be used in your practice, how you use them in your practice, besides what you've just told us? But like, do you get what I'm sort of talking about?
For sure.
Just a little bit more. Just tell me more.
Yeah. It's such a big topic to explain the Akashic Records, because it's such a big thing. It's very, it's like everyone's soul record. So everyone we all have souls. So, we all have a record of where our soul's been and where it's traveled to. But yeah, I guess as the practitioners, our readings center around very much healing. I mean, the first thing we do is we check in with a person's chakras. Like, we just go, okay, well, what's happening on that sort of metaphysical level? What's happening in the aura? And are there some past life blockages, or what's happening in the present day moment that's being influenced by a past life? So it's like getting straight in there on that sort of energetic level. And the chakras are very much part of that beginning stage. And then it just kind of unwinds from there. And every reading's different. I don't want to...
Completely different.
They're all really different.
Yeah, it's like getting this vast amount of information, but bringing it down to the person to suit them on a practical level.
Yes.
I think that's sort of our job. Yeah.
Yes.
That absolutely makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I certainly know when I sort of made that demand, it was exactly that. It was just a truck ton of information, and it was energetic, and it was just kind of like, whoa.
Yeah.
And some parts I could, like, after the initial download had started, and opening, I should say, I was then able to start directing it to certain areas, and I was like, okay, well, tell me more about this, and tell me more about this, and tell me more about this. And it was just like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
It was so fascinating. And so when I found out that I was going to be able to have a chat with you ladies, I was just like, oh, yes. So in this, because you're dealing with things on such a different level to what most people do, bringing in the Akashic Records elements, like, what does consciousness mean to you from your guys' perspective?
Yeah, we had, we were talking about this earlier. It's such an interesting question. I guess for us, we were saying, like, the opposite of consciousness is obviously unconsciousness, which, before, let's say, we started reading the records, we were unconscious in a lot of different areas of our life. We just weren't aware of certain things. And then as we go more and more, have more and more time in the Akashic Records, it's like your consciousness just can't help but keep increasing. So you become more and more sensitive or intuitive to the subtleties or the nuances that are happening all the time in the present moment. If that makes sense. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah. And I was just going to say as well, it's living with intention, because once you start working the records, you see the consequences of your actions. So being aware and living with intention as well, I would say. Yeah. Thank you, Frozen Lorraine. Sorry, Lorraine.
Yep. Do we have it frozen?
Not sure.
Let's just check.
Okay. Hi, Sandra.
Hi, Sandra. Hopefully you can see us.
Hopefully it's just a little glitch.
Just a little glitch in the Wi-Fi, I think.
Okay.
It's just us now.
Just us. Okay. We've lost Lorraine temporarily.
Hopefully she can come back on soon. Well, this is unexpected. Should we just continue?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, all right then.
No worries.
What else can we say about consciousness in the Akashic Records? It's like I didn't say this earlier.
Mercury retrograde, shadow period. Yes, Alex, right, yes. You are.
That's right. We're beginning the Mercury retrograde for sure. Yeah. Well, anyway, I just guess we'll go on. But with the Akashic Records, for instance, we're starting to see things when you get a reading, not from so much the human perspective, but from a 5-dimensional perspective. So we start to see our life up here rather than down here. So it's like it can't help but broaden your mind and broaden your perspective on situations in your life and how you're seeing them, your perception. But then when you go into the records, it's like the information about that certain situation is so much more vast. Yeah.
Thank you for filling in for me.
No worries at all.
It was the wonderful listeners. Yeah.
I have a lovely internet connection here where it starts to rain, and then because the fiber to the curb doesn't go all the way into the house, and the rain just makes it go. So we're on the good old mobile network now. It's more reliable.
Okay.
No worries.
So thank you. Oh, hi, Sandra. Oh, I love it. See, my audience had my back. They just
I know, they were great.
Alex, oh, funny Mercury retrograde shadow period strikes. Oh, I love it. So yes, if anybody in the audience has any questions for these gorgeous women, please pop them up in the chat and they'll answer them. All right, back to where we were. Oh dear. So I'd like to know, we've talked a bit about like the journey and stuff, and I'd like to know, like, what is your most tasty moment in life so far?
Yeah, we feel like it's running our business, and the feeling you get perhaps after you've done a really amazing session with a client, or how you feel after you've run a group that's been really, I guess, juicy and fulfilling.
Yeah, it's the ride, I think, as well. The ups and downs. I want to include the downs too, because they could be super tasty in their own way. I think it's the ride of running a spiritual business and how much you grow with the business. It's like the two just go hand in hand. So we've been doing it now for 4.5 years, and just we look back on it and just like, whoa, how crazy has this ride been? Like, and many tasty moments within that. So I think that's probably what we want to say around that.
The journey of growing and stretching ourselves, running a small business in an alternative field. I think it's been really good.
And I know you beautiful ladies are based here in Adelaide, up in the hills. And have you noticed, this is a bit of a random question for you, have you noticed over the last, I would say 10 years, so before you were conscious, as you said before, through till now, have you noticed there's been a shift in the energies around Adelaide?
That's a really good question.
I think in the last couple of years especially, things are changing. I think a lot of people are waking up really quick. That's sort of my intuition around it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I mean, we both had our times outside of Adelaide where we needed to, like, kind of like, I call it like the hero's journey. It's like where you go out and you just need to spend some time outside of where you grew up to have new experiences, and then you come back. And yeah, I think definitely it's really interesting. I feel like things are speeding up a bit, and I feel like COVID's been a big part of that. Certainly when those things were hitting, we kind of were like, okay, but what's the higher reasoning behind all of this changing? And, moving into the 5D and the age of Aquarius, depending on which language or whatever research or area of, astrology or whatever you're interested in. I really do think there's big changes, and we can feel it. You can see it in the weather too. I feel like just on a daily basis, it's that, I think that's where the meditating every day is really good, because then you can tune in with those energies and see kind of what's going on and feel around it. So we try and be as grounded in nature as we can. Otherwise we get a bit swept up in things. If we go to the city, we get a bit kind of edgy pretty quickly. But that's a really good question though. I will reflect more on that one.
I know, I mean, that for me, I've certainly noticed, because I came over here in 2010, and the energies of the land are very different here as to what they are back in New Zealand. So I noticed that straight away, even though I was sort of in my, not quite my spiritual journey, but sort of. I just sort of started to dabble, I guess you could say, and I'd gone off to a couple of shows, and I'd then had a couple of readings from people, and I'd done a little bit of my own healing. I say a little bit. I used Ina Segal's techniques to heal some precancerous cells in my cervix when I was 29. So I had dabbled here and there, and I'd sort of got into oracle card reading, and so I was sort of aware that I had awareness, but I didn't really trust it back then. And I went for a reading with a lady, and when it wasn't too long after I arrived here over at Mind Body Psychic, and she said, the energy here is very thick and sticky, because she was from out of town, and she said that it's almost like it kind of gets stuck on the hills, like the energy comes in and then it gets stuck on the hills, and I'm like, what hills?
What are you talking about?
And I've certainly noticed over the years that thickness of energy has changed. It's become very much lighter. I think where there's, from my understanding, there's some like crystalline energy sitting underneath Adelaide, which is very strong. I guess you guys maybe know about that. And to me, people are starting to really work with that in a more holistic, clean way, rather than using it for other purposes.
Totally. I mean, we've heard that there's a lot of quartz crystal underneath the Adelaide Hills. We heard that from an Indigenous elder. So we weren't always in the hills. We grew up more in the city, but we were drawn more towards the hills, I think, as we became more spiritual, probably just being drawn towards nature and things like that. So, and the more community-minded aspects of the hills as well. But I definitely agree that the energy of Adelaide, definitely, sometimes it does feel a bit thick, maybe in certain areas as well. But yeah, I feel that shift. I feel like I always feel like Adelaide has so much potential. I think there's so many amazing healers here doing really big work. Like, and it's not, and really authentic people. It's not showy. It's not kind of pretentious. It's like these people who are just working on the ground doing amazing stuff. So I'm all for Adelaide. I've had some negative experiences in Adelaide and I needed to get out for a while, but then I've come back in and realized that it's an amazing place with some really amazing healers doing pretty amazing stuff. So yeah, a bit of both, right?
Yeah. I agree with you. Like I too have seen and experienced some not so great stuff, but hey, it takes all sorts. Sorts. I'd like to just grab that question from Stuffy because it's quite juicy. So he said, if the Akashic Records have a record of past, present, and future actions, would that be that we are not doing anything of our own, being that all is already done and that all we need to do is to be aware of the moment unfolding without judgment? We are right now exactly where we are meant to be, typing, saying, and listening to what is written.
That's
great.
Great.
That's a great question. That's really awesome. So, wow. Yeah, it's really interesting when you think about your records because there is an element, I want to say, where things are already written. Like
you've already signed soul contracts with people.
That's it. Before you incarnate, right?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you go. So there's also life events, and you can see that even when you look at your astrological birth chart. So the Akashic Records are very much in line with astrology, like that certain things in your life are predetermined, and that you're exactly where you're meant to be, and that everything that's unfolded is as it should be. But there's also this element of a choice, isn't there? Or
free will
as well. So we don't want to discount free will because I think it still has its part to play, even if there are these kind of predetermined things in our lifetime that can be already written. But I love that bit about the moment unfolding without judgment. I mean, that's perfect. That's absolutely part of being really in tune, at least with our records and where we're like the highest path. It's like we have a lot of choices in every moment, but if we're more in tune, we're going to choose probably that path that's going to lead us to the highest vibration, if that makes sense. We can always have detours, but we're always going to come back.
Isn't that interesting? So Stuffy has gone on to say, if all is written, we are the observers of the written. Everything would have to be exactly as it is. Question mark. It's sort of a Stuffy, that was a bit more of a statement. But anyway, free will should be written, which in itself would not be free will at all.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting way to look at it for sure. And I would agree with that. Completely. So yes, it's interesting. We say free will, but yet sometimes it feels like, or often our experience in the records is that it's kind of like, yes, we have free will, but we also kind of don't, and that things are very predetermined as well. So
like the souls we're going to do a dance within this life, or the challenging events we need to overcome, we always see that as pre-written. Sure.
Yeah, beautiful. It's kind of like when I started asking some questions, there was I asked a question around my friend in Canada, and she and I have been friends since probably 2016, I think. We met each other through a Facebook group that was doing a 30-day video challenge. And she just kind of liked some of the stuff that I was putting up, and I liked some of the stuff that she was putting up. And like, we just kind of became friends. And then it was just like, we've become very deep, dear friends over the last 5-6 years. And when I asked about her, the information that I got was that we have always been like this. Throughout every single lifetime that we've ever shared, we've always had this loving, conscious, this just empowerment kind of a relationship. We've never, ever had a relationship where we've argued and fought. We've never had those kinds of relationships. And it's like we have this agreement that we will always find each other no matter what. And this particular group that we found each other in there was 5,000 people in there.
Yeah.
And it was just like, blew my mind, but it totally made sense. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. So while free will says, you know, we could have found each other in a multitude of different ways. It's just that we found each other through that particular Facebook group.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, that's
It's
awesome.
so true. And you know when you've really met someone from a past life, and so many of us, if we have any relationship with anyone, it's usually we've known that, we've done that dance before with them. It's that strong kind of connection. It's that connection with their eyes. It's also if you really, really like someone, but also if you really, really hate someone.
You're really repelled.
Really repelled by someone. That's also a sign that, hey, we've done this dance before and something karmically may have happened in that interaction.
Yeah.
That we're coming back to, you know, revisit and have a look at again. It's really fascinating to look at that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And there's so many things that come up in your spiritual journey. I know for me, this last probably year has been like a big jump forward for me. And looking more so upon reflection, looking at those other relationships that I've had, even the one with my mum. Like in the last year, I've become so much more just in total gratitude for her. Even though we've had up until that point a kind of a bit of a rough relationship really, but I realized that through doing my holistic counseling studies, like we have a same life path number, but when I looked at the different attributes, it was like all the stuff that wasn't relevant to me was relevant to her and vice versa. And I was like, whoa. And the stuff that was relevant to her was the more harsh stuff. And I went, and that's when it clicked for me. I was like, holy moly, Mum, like, thank you. Because obviously we've had this soul agreement that I would come through you somehow and you would force me to be out of the family unit. You would empower me to be really strong and independent, think for myself, you know, and just become very aware of the world. And I couldn't do that unless I had her as my mum.
Yeah, how perfect in its own way, right?
Yeah. So all those years, unfortunately, I at times I have those moments of going, oh, I'm so sorry, Mum. You know, I judged her so harshly for not being the mum that I required her to be at the time, because she wasn't soft. She wasn't loving. She didn't tell me she loved me, and she didn't hug me, and she didn't do all those things. She did that sort of stuff to my brothers, but she didn't do it to me. And it was very tough, you know, but now that I'm in my 40s and I look back and I see that stuff and I go, okay, I gotcha. Thank you. Could I have this conversation with her? No. Oh dear.
And I think it's those challenging relationships that teach us the most, right? So when you see it from the higher perspective, you can come at it from an angle of gratitude, which is really lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that leads us really nicely into this next question of like, if you could give a little bit of a hint of advice or a tip, a tasty tip, if you like, to somebody who is young, maybe in their 20s, and just sort of starting out, maybe having their big like moments, maybe they're you know, having those spiritual awakening moments. Like, what sort of advice or tips or encouragement would you give to them?
I'd probably say, first of all, like, it's all going to be okay.
Trust the process.
Reassurance of like, that pain is part of the process. Or you know, if it feels scary and overwhelming, and you know, you feel disconnected and ungrounded or anything like that, it's like it is temporary. It does get easier with time. But I'd also say it's well, what would you say?
Well, I would also say, find your tribe or try and lock into community. It's been certainly really important for me on my journey. So yeah, trust the process and lock into community, or start connecting with your tribe if you can. If you're lucky enough to have people around you.
Yeah. And it's also, I loved when you start to, like, your intuition starts to come in, you start to become like more conscious and aware, and then you start being more aware of synchronicity and things like that. And then you can get these little breadcrumbs from the universe, and it's like all of a sudden, you know, you might keep hearing about a certain book that you need to read, or you keep hearing about a certain person, or someone keeps mentioning a course, and you go, all right, I'm hearing that for a reason. I'm going to follow that breadcrumb. And then you go to that course and you meet this person that you're meant to meet, because then they tell you about something else. So it's like this little journey that you start to go on, and you don't know where it's going, but your soul knows and the universe knows. And it's that, like, you're learning to trust, and it's those little steps. And you're not in control anymore. Your mind and your ego have to kind of take a bit of a back seat, and your soul and your heart is starting to lead the way. And that can be really scary or uncomfortable, but it can also be so magical when you start to realize that every day is like this little adventure of little tidbits from the universe or from your spirit guides that are kind of like, yeah, it's okay, just come over here, and then we want you to come over here, and then you'll learn about this. And it's just this constant winding path of cool, magical moments, and you know, the wonderful people you meet along the way who just are also messages with really cool information to help expand your repertoire or your healing abilities or whatever. So I think that's really important when you're starting off as well.
Absolutely. I'm smiling so much because there's just so many moments I can think of in my own life where that exactly thing happened, you know, like when I was back on to recovery after the end of my first marriage, and I was back at work, and I was feeling like I wish to do something for the community. So again, I was sort of being led to find a tribe of such, and I was looking at the local paper, and, you know, just the free one that just pops into your letterbox. And there was an advert in there for lifeline counselors, like telephone counselors. And I was like, I like talking and I like helping people. And that said full training given, and you don't have to have any other qualifications. And I was like, sweet, I can fit this in around my full-time work and all that. And so I went off and I did the training, ended up meeting a lady who ended up taking me to a law of attraction meeting where I picked up the Ina Segal book, where I, you know, and then it just kind of went on and on and on from there. And it was just like, wow. So like we said, those little breadcrumbs, right? Yeah. You know, the end of my first marriage was very traumatic. And at the same token, I called it, for a long time, I used to call it, I imploded. But in a lot of ways, I actually exploded. You know, my world just burst out, and it was rough and it was horrible. And, you know, I couldn't read a toddler's book because I just didn't have the mental capacity to do so for a bit. You know, it was just one of those times. So, just, I agree with you both, is just keep going. Take it easy on yourself and find your tribe, definitely, and just be open. You know, I remember really distinctly, a friend of mine was sitting there doing oracle cards or angel cards, and I was like, wow, how did you do that? How can you even know how did you do those messages and stuff? And I was absolutely astounded that that's even possible, that you could get messages from like somewhere And it comes out in the cards and it was spot on. And I'm like, how is that? Wow. And it sparked in me that thing of learning that, because I got a sense that I could learn it. It was just like I didn't know how yet. You know?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and I think we're so conditioned within our society or our culture not to even look at that stuff, you know. It's nowhere near the mainstream curriculum or what we learn at school, and we're certainly not taught or encouraged to trust our own intuition or to follow our heart or soul. So, yeah, I think it takes a brave person to be able to do that. So, yeah.
Thank you for being brave women. Following your intuition. Oh dear. And I think that's one of the things I say to my clients often when they come through is like, thank you for being so brave, because this journey is not always an easy one.
No.
And you know, I'm just so
rich,
humbled.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the word we've used for this year, actually. We found it really humbling. Rich but humbling at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like just knowing that we are able to support, assist, nourish, and nurture this healing within so many people is just so beautiful. And I love that. I love that we have that ability to do that, and the capacities and the people who are willing to come through to us, you know, because they know how potent we are. They're aware of it, and that can be a bit scary sometimes, you know.
That's cool.
I love these conversations. They're so good. And one book that I was thinking, if somebody who is in the younger side of things, maybe who haven't read the book, don't watch the movie. All right. I know it's easy to think about watching the movie, but don't watch the movie because it's rubbish. Is The Celestine Prophecy.
Yeah.
That's a book that's excellent for explaining the breadcrumbs.
Agreed.
Yes.
Yeah. And I had that when I was overseas. People kept mentioning that book. They were like, oh, have you read The Celestine Prophecy? I was like, no. And then someone else would mention it by like the fourth person. I was like, okay. I get it. I need to read this book. And then I read it and I was just like, whoa, like so amazing. Actually, I didn't even have to buy it. It was at like an Airbnb I was staying at, and it was just sitting there right on the shelf. And I was like, okay, I get it. Like, I need to read this. It was, and yeah, I know it's those books that come along at the right time that just kind of go like, boom, opening up, like everything's making sense. We need to reread that book,
Absolutely,
I think.
Yeah.
I'm thinking me too. There was one point when I ended up with 2 copies of it.
There you go.
So,
Yeah.
wow. So yes, I think it has been coming up a lot lately. So I think perhaps it is time to reread that one.
Yeah.
Just Sandra Lang, she says that she has the same life path as her daughter too, and hers is an 11.
11. Nice. They say that's very powerful.
Yes.
The 11 life path.
Master number.
Yeah. Hi, Matthew. Thank you, Matthew.
There are at least 10 books.
10 books.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I only know the first one. Oh, but in saying that, I was in a Crystal Wave in the last couple of weeks, and I did see there was a few other types in there, and I was like, oh, well, that's interesting, because I've never read any of the others. Perhaps it's time for me to join up with the library. I wonder if they're on Audible.
Probably.
Yeah.
That would be good. I devour a lot of books via Audible these days.
Yeah,
I'm doing
it's
other
good
work
that way, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Yeah. I do love a good book. I love the weight of a book. I love the smell. I like being able to know how far it is to go. You know, there's something quite kinesthetic about that. And it's just, I'm finding that I'm able to have the input of Audible with so much more ease with my current lifestyle.
Yep.
You know, so because I chuck it on when I'm doing renovations and stuff. So it's I'm learning and physically moving at the same time.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Or just zoning out with a story about dragons and stuff.
Also needed.
Also, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I think that would also be another tip I would say to people on their spiritual journey is, along with just going easy, becoming aware of your body and its requirements for rest.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes, this is always something that comes up for us, is just, helping others or holding space for others is tiring. And we're such big advocates for rest.
Yeah, we feel like we go on about it a lot. I'm really glad you
always
brought that
going
up.
on about it.
One of my biggest lessons, or our biggest lessons, has been around fatigue, because I still experience a lot of fatigue with my illness. It's like it's been a long journey of healing. But we were just saying the other day how fatigue is so good because it slows you down enough to reflect and actually look at your actions. But it also gets you to focus on what's really important, because when you're feeling really fatigued, you don't take on more than what you need to. You're just like, right, I'm fatigued.
Focused, right?
I just need to get A, B, and C done, and that's it. Like, you don't take on extra. So, fatigue is kind of one of those things where, you're meant to drink more coffee and just push through it. But that's so unhealthy, and it's so just counterproductive that if you work with the fatigue, it can have so many gifts.
Yeah, absolutely. We find it always aligns us back onto our path. We're like, fatigue, okay, we're out of alignment, and what's super important right now.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. It's like today I had, just had a bit of a pottering around day. It was just, I wasn't doing any reno work. I didn't have any clients booked in. And I was just like, today's the day to just be half in pajamas, half and not in pajamas, and just potter around and do things. And there was one point this afternoon, it was about 3:00, and I could see that the weather was getting a little bit dodgy, and I was doing some work outside, and I was like, no, I'll just push through. And next thing you know, the saw is jumping and cutting a little bit into my finger, and I'm like, oh. And I was like, after I dealt with that, I was like, that's okay. Thank you, body, for showing me, because quite clearly you were very loud and you were saying, can we please stop and have a cuppa? Like, you've worked your body hard today, and it's time to have a little rest. That would be really good, thanks. And I pushed past it for about 20 minutes. And I don't normally do that. So she just got a bit louder. Made me stop.
Yeah.
And so I thought, gosh, that's a good one to put up on good old Facebook as an inspirational type post of like, where do you push through? Where do you not listen to your body? Because she tells you stuff all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. She's
Thanks,
a
Duffy.
wonderful instrument.
Yeah, absolutely. He's just put up the James Redfield Celestine Prophecy audiobook. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you.
He's so clever like that. He just does, like, just seriously, I need to hire him as my admin lady. He's just awesome.
That's super helpful.
So before we wind up, I have one other tasty question for you. So if you could sit next to any person on a park bench for the afternoon and the weather was perfect and, it was just lovely, who would that be and why?
Yeah, so we looked at this earlier and we thought straight away, we both said it at the same time. We were like, Eckhart Tolle, without a doubt for the both of us.
Yeah.
Just even the sound of his voice, the resonance of his voice is so calming.
Yeah. Just an amazing, so humble, so present. Yeah, we only need to hear his voice on YouTube or on, and the power of now. We both found the power of now early on in our journey, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like he just puts these big spiritual concepts into such beautiful, simple, like easy to understand language, and he's just I just think he's the most inspirational, humble, compassionate, empathetic, teacher that there is. And I think he's so accessible for so many people, no matter where you're at on your path. That was it for us. Yeah.
did you have any sort of thoughts about what kind of questions you might ask him?
I don't know. I think I just
Yeah.
want to be around his energy because he's just so calm and lovely. Wow. What sort of questions?
Sure, he sort of does a lot of rhetorical questions,
He does.
doesn't he?
He does.
So
he would probably put a
ask it
question
right back at you.
Yeah, I think I would just ask him, how do you stay so serene all the time? Yeah.
That's a good question. I love it. And just a quick little hi to Lynn, who's actually, that's the Barry Collins. That's her husband. She's from New Zealand.
Lovely.
Lovely to have her joining us. And and obviously, hi, Maddie. I should go, hi, Maddie. Oh, dear. Well, thank you so much for coming to join us today. Would you like to let the audience know what have you got coming up? How can they get in touch with you? That sort of stuff, because I know you lovely beings have lots of yummy things coming up in the future and that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah. So certainly if you want to check out our services at all, go to lotussisters.net, and we always have a series of events up or other offerings that we have. But we also have an equinox event at our space in Aldgate on the 22nd, which should be lovely. We're going to do a bit of an art activity in there. You don't have to have any experience being an artist. Also some meditation and some chilled music, and it should be a lovely chilled event. Yeah, planting seeds of intention for the rest of the year, I guess. So
yes. It should be a beautiful event. And we're also starting to run a course on how to become an Akashic Records practitioner. So we're just taking names at the moment for anyone who's interested in learning how to read the Akashic Records for others. So anyone who's interested. And yes, we're on Instagram. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much.
Lotus Sisters Life. I was just about to mention Instagram as well. So
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, it's probably pulling that from the show notes because it's all in there in the show notes too. But I'm seriously, I think I'm going to have to send him over a special cup of coffee for that.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, very helpful.
Dear.
There we go.
On Facebook. Thank you so much. Yes.
Big link for Facebook.
There's our Facebook page. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Starthy. You're beautiful. Thank you. Well, ladies, I know we could probably talk about all the stuff for many, many hours. And I would love to do that with you. However, we have a time frame. So I'm very impressed that we've managed to keep it to the time frame today. And this has been just one of the most special conversations that I've had so far with my podcast. And thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. It's just been such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having us on. We're really excited, and it's just been so lovely and inviting and warm, like sitting by the fire. So thank you so much for your energy as well.
It's like just heat you all up. Oh dear. Well, my beautiful beings and my lovely, lovely audience, thank you for coming to play with us today. We have really enjoyed your interactions, and thank you again to Starthy for all of those links and the excellent questions. It's been super cool. And I look forward to seeing you all on Friday for Find You Fridays for the Intuitive Reading Show. And next week we have Leanne Greville, I think is how we say her last name, who is coming on to have a little chat with me next week. So I'm looking forward to that one because it's going to be a totally different topic all over again. And that's what I love about these shows. Thank you, everybody, for coming to play, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Yeah.